In a few short seasons, ExoTiiK has come a long way. He came from this player who was essentially a toss-in gap filler for SMPR Esports, who had lost Archie and given up all hope. They just decided to take a flyer on this ExoTiiK guy, and it ended up paying off. I mean, the Frenchman ended up leading them to a pretty serious World Championship run, and that was definitely not a team that was rife with talent, but they really shocked us, going 3-0 in groups and taking down a Space Station Gaming in Game 7 in that round 3 to kind of get there. And they ended up dropping Endpoint too, which was funny because that's where Archie had gone to, as kind of an ironic, tie a bow on that storyline. But they ended up falling to an NRG who is in their kind of last-ditch, power player in the world run. And even then, it was a little suspicious because Cassio was the only player who was on the actual stage. Shawset 45 and ExoTiiK were playing from their hotel rooms because they had contracted COVID, I believe, at the time. But we left that event taking ExoTiiK a lot more seriously. He was 9th overall in rating in that World Championship run, and it made sense where Karmine Corp ended up taking a flyer on him the next season to pick up the Frenchman, and they ended up being the most consistently dominant team in the entire world for last season, as ExoTiiK is going to get a flick over CRR there in transition to put them up 2-0. And that flick in transition is something that I think is a core piece of ExoTiiK as a player. And we're going to get into stats here in a second and kind of contextualize who ExoTiiK was last season and what he might be moving forward with this new BDS roster. But something that really stood out to me when watching film is ExoTiiK's propensity to show up big in big games. This is Game 7 World Championship, trying to close out complexity here, and ExoTiiK, spoiler alert, is going to end up being our most dominant player in this game, the MVP, as it were, of this Game 7. And that's something that shows up quite a bit. Not only was he the best player in this game, but if we go back to the Spring Major, they lost in a Game 7 to BDS, but ExoTiiK was the best player in that game, and even back to the Winter Major in the semifinals when they closed out Team Liquid. ExoTiiK was 1.6 rating over the course of that series, and great in that Game 6. And in the finals against FaZe Clan Game 6, ExoTiiK was the MVP by a landslide as well. So ExoTiiK is definitely a player who can be there in big moments. And I mean, even in smaller moments, I remember looking at the stats before we went into the Winter Major. I was shocked to see that ExoTiiK was leading Karmine Corp in a lot of offensive stats. There was a lot of games and series where he was taking the most shots and scoring the most, which isn't what you would expect as someone who is kind of playing off of Vatira and Itachi, but nonetheless. But let's kind of contextualize him a bit more and talk about some stats. So, players in North America and Europe who played at least 50 games last season is the stat sheet we are drawing from. ExoTiiK was 6th in shooting percentage. So again, not a player who shoots a ton. Not somebody who is going to get a ton of usage, but will make the most out of the opportunities that he is given. 11th in assists per game, 0.65, pretty fantastic. Goals per game, 17th. Rating, 17th. Goal participation, 52nd. So again, not really a player who's doing a ton of shooting. And that's something to keep our eyes on as we head into next season with this new look BDS roster alongside Monkey Moon and dralii. We know what Monkey Moon is. We know that Monkey Moon is still one of the best players in Europe, if not the world. At least I consider him that way on both the offensive and defensive ends. But I think with the removal of Seiko and Rise, there's a big gap in scoring, and dralii is an unknown commodity. I don't know really if we can rely on him as a consistent offensive force, and that's what they're going to need ExoTiiK to be if they want to continue to contend. And of course, different look, new team, new role, could certainly see it, but the early signs haven't been great. Some of these off-season tournaments I haven't loved what they've looked like, and it gives me flashbacks to something that I was nervous about last season in the World Championship, where Vatira seemed to not always be super trustworthy of ExoTiiK especially on the defensive end. And I thought that was surprising because he's somebody who has always performed well in big moments and, you know, is a defensive stalwart when you need him to be. But that lack of faith is something that caught my eye. So really, the big question heading into next season is, can ExoTiiK be the star player that BDS needs him to be to continue to be considered one of the best teams in the world? Can he get back to those SMPR days, or was that SMPR thing more of a flash in the pan? Time will tell. What do you think about ExoTiiK and what we're going to see from him next season? Please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for checking in on the videos, guys, and until next time, see you later.